Welcome to That Pennsylvania Witch podcast. My name is Katelyn Dawn. Thanks for joining us today. On today's episode of That Pennsylvania Witch, I welcome author and storyteller Halo Quin. I'm excited to share our journey with you today. We really talk about everything in this episode. Enjoy. Halo, thank you so much for coming on. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
I'm really excited too. We've not encountered each other previously, so having the little chat before the recording, I'm quite excited to see how this conversation goes.
Yes, me too. So you released Storytelling for Magick through Moon Books Publishing in January. It is a delightful read. I love Bardic tales. I love the art of ritual theater. Can you tell me about what inspired you to write that book?
I started out my magical journey, as it were, quite young, and I found my way into paganism and all that jazz. And then it was a week after my 18th birthday, there was a witch camp in the reclaiming tradition of witchcraft. Now, you might be able to hear my voice. I'm from the UK. I'm English. I live in Wales, and I've been here for 20 years now, and I love it here. And this was a little camp. It's an American tradition, but it was a little camp in the UK, and they were working with the story of Katelyn and Taliesin. And a reclaiming witch camp is almost always, you get there, it's an intensive, and it'll be working with a story. So we had 7 days, just a week after I turned 18, 7 days where I was in this space with about 70 other witches, engaging with magic through story. And through this story, not just any story, but a story about how the Awen, sorry, I've got the West Country accent, the Awen flows into the world through the cauldron of Katelyn, and how Taliesin, the greatest bard that ever lived, became reborn from the boy that he was into the bard that he became. So it was a story about how you are inspired and how the bardic arts flow into the world. And that story led me into Wales, and I met storytellers there. And one day on a whim, I asked them to take me on as one of them, my dear friend Brochfell, to take me on as an apprentice as a storyteller. And he said, yeah, sure. I'm going to be doing storytelling in the Iron Age roundhouses just south of here for the summer. Do you want to come and have a go? So I did. And he paid me for the first session. He paid me in a pair of leather shoes that were Iron Age appropriate. And at the end of the summer, I borrowed a beautiful silver torque from him, which is it's like a solid necklace that goes around your neck, like most of a circle. It's just open at the front. And it was just this simple silver band. And I'd worn it through those storytelling practices, telling the stories from a Mabinogi, and feeling the enchantment in that space. When you tell a tale and people listen, and the world of that story is grows between you, is co-created in the group, in the moment. It flows in that moment. And so at the end of the summer, he paid me for my storytelling in that talk, and it became one of my main magical items. So I wear that for most rituals that I do. So I had this sort of background weaving into there. And then when I started doing a PhD in philosophy of art, and it wasn't quite working. And then that engagement with storytelling, I went, oh, not visual art, but storytelling. How does the experience of storytelling re-enchant our world? How does it help us see things anew? How does it shift us from the mundane into the magical? So all of these different threads have been weaving through my life, and I ended up in Wales after that first camp and working with Taliesin and Katelyn in this land, and those stories in this land, and the magic and the ritual. And I realized that was where magic that doesn't just move us as pagans and as magicians and as witches and as druids and as whatever, right? It's also magic that we can share with people who are outside of those spaces. It's magic that people understand. So one, storytelling itself is magic. It's an enchantment. It's a way of enchanting the world. Two, when we weave our stories into our magic, we also honor the gods and the spirits and the beings and the world that is held in those stories. And three, When we step into a magical circle, we step into a ritual space. Those bardic skills that you use when you're storytelling, when you're performing, of speaking, of moving the awen through you, the magic through you that flows through all of life, singing enchantment into the world, speaking enchantment into the world. That flows through you doing the bardic arts. And when we bring that into our ritual spaces, we bring even more magic into those spaces. So those skills of performance skills enhance our magic, and performance carries magic into the world.
Oh, I've often been surprised by people who I know, kind of in the mundane world, how different their ritual voice can be and how powerful their ritual voice can be. That's something that I've experienced quite often.
There's an exercise that I do with people. So I would get it a lot after I tell a story. People would say, "Oh, I wish I could tell a story. Oh, I wish I could do that." And it's like, well, of course you can. It's really a natural thing for human beings to do. We just kind of get discouraged from it. Those of us that are confident already when we're young and we talk a lot get told, "Oh no, hush, hush, hush," right? And the other people who are a bit anxious and maybe are a bit quieter, forever being pushed to be louder, and that's stressful. So either direction, we're kind of, and then we're taught, "Oh no, it's only all right. We're only allowed to be storytellers, be bardic, to sing, to dance, to whatever, if we can do it professionally." It's like, that's not true at all. These are all really natural things for us. So I actually wrote Storytelling for Magic in part to help people find some of those skills for themselves and learn some of those skills to remember how natural it is, and how easy it can be to weave those stories in and weave those skills in. And yeah, finding that process of finding your ritual voice that's natural for you, that isn't just copying someone else's.
Oh, that's an important distinction as well. Yeah. So I love how in your book you referred to, use it as a workbook, right in the margins, right in the blank spots. That's something I do naturally. So I consume books without intending to. I never borrow books from people because I will inevitably destroy them and make them my own. But it's really a great read. And again, that was released in January of 2025, but you're working on something new, right?
Yeah, well, I think that was my 8th book out.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got I think it was 8. So I've got book number 9 that's in progress, which is actually an introduction through Moon Books. It's one of the Pagan Portals ones, so it's one of the pocket-sized books. So I've got to be really focused and clear on it, which I really like. Like, you get to pick up something that's just an introduction that holds that sort of foundation for you to then go and work further and meet the magic. And the book that I'm working on is an introduction to the goddess Babalon.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit earlier, and I was trying to rack my brain for where have I heard that goddess before? Where have I heard it? And then it's in Aleister Crowley's writings. That's where I had heard it before in 2 different books, I think. The depiction of the Book of Thoth, and then another one. So, can you tell me a little bit about that goddess?
Absolutely. So you're quite right. She's in the format that we have her, in the form that we know her. She's relatively modern goddess with ancient roots, and she came to us into the world via Crowley's work. Now, I don't consider myself to be a Thelemite, though my Thelemite friends, so like one of the followers of Crowley, my Thelemite friends go, "Well, yeah, but you're Thelema adjacent," because a lot of my work has some of the same goals of helping people, and for myself, getting in touch with my true self, helping other people get in touch with their true self. I call it your heart's desire. They call it your true will, right? So your divine calling. And Babylon is a goddess who is about that liberation from oppression and liberation from the internal psychological chains and the expectations of society and those restrictions that let you actually access that without shame. So come in touch with the part of yourself that is your true divine calling, your divine work. And there's a really important piece in there. You might know the phrase, you probably know the phrase, Love is the law, love under will. Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law, right? So that's from Thelema. That's a Crowley thing. And a lot of people say, oh, do as thou wilt. That means you can do whatever you want. But actually, your will, your true will, is that divine calling. And if you are following your divine calling and everyone else is following their divine calling, then that kind of necessitates you not stopping anyone else and not oppressing or holding back anyone else from doing that. And so if everyone was in alignment with their divine calling, their true will, their heart's desire, we'd all be moving like stars on a course alongside each other. So Babylon holds this space of liberation. She also holds this point in the cosmology where the divine all that is formless before form, before time, before and after, and we can't talk about it because our language is this and not this, and it's
we don't have the words to describe it.
right. And she is in the cosmology, she holds that point where the divine comes into the manifest, where the potential becomes what is, and is also holds the point where what is returns to the potential, the beyond. And so she's an earth goddess in that sense of, or an earthly goddess in the sense of bringing the divine, bring the spirit, bring whatever you want to call it, bring magic into manifestation. So she's here with us, helping us be liberated in our spaces. And she's there liberating us from this life, but also bringing us into this life. So it's all about crossing those boundaries. And when she's got these ancient roots, I consider her to be a great-great-granddaughter of Inanna, Ishtar, Aphrodite, that lineage. Because where she came in, that she shows up in the Bible, in the book of Revelations, that's the holy harlot, the great whore riding the great beast. Now, John in that book was writing, right, visions of apocalyptica, but he was drawing on those ancient images, those ancient stories, because he was railing against the old pagan ways of a deity that is divine and is sexual, sensual, physical, powerful, particularly with a female form. So you've got this goddess being presented as something wicked. And she then comes through and she turns up in John Dee and Edward Kelly's visions in the 1500s. They were scrying and seeking angels and working with angel magic. And she shows up there. And then when Crowley tried to do the same, worked on the same process and the same set of visions, because Dee and Kelly wrote it all down, so he did the same set of rituals, he encountered Babylon there through that lens of the whore of Babylon in Revelations. And the reason that's important, the reason I feel that's important, is because she, in that form, though we might go, oh, that's kind of, I don't like calling a goddess a whore, that's uncomfortable. Having that position where John was in the Bible in Revelations was going, oh no, the wicked whore of Babylon. He held then that image of that goddess, of that powerful part of the divine that allowed it to come through to our time as a force of liberation, as a force of female sexual power, of queer sexual power, of crossing those boundaries, of general sexual power, of power and magic and life force being manifest in the world, moving along together, of desire being a thing that can move life and is important. And because he went, oh no, it's wicked and horrible, that image stayed and got passed down and the edges didn't get polished off. So Crowley then managed to open the gates a little bit further for her to come back through in that form of going, no, the divine also holds those powerful pieces of sexuality, of manifestation, of not just the transcendental pretty, not just the light and love and the sweetness of nurturing, but also the get your fingers in the mud, also the welcome the monstrous parts of ourselves that we'd rather keep in the shadows because we've been told they're wrong, when actually they're just unacceptable to the machine of society. Anyway, that's a long way of saying Babalon is a modern goddess. She's got ancient roots, and she carries through that power of sensuality, sexuality, and in those higher formats, the more sort of cosmological places. She holds the gateway between life and death, between spirit and matter, and reminds us that they're all actually the same thing, and all of it is sacred, all of it is holy, even the bits that we go, oh, that's wicked, that's monstrous.
Seems to be a common theme that is arising with most of my studies recently. And of course, Babalon as a complex archetype, a complex goddess or deity figure. Some people would say a demon. I don't necessarily agree, because I think that's projecting a title onto something that's newer, that's not needed. But I feel like that this is just scratching the surface, and I have some research to do. So that is fantastic. I love it.
You'd be very welcome to join the Babalon Club. I'm doing a little book club where people can join to get the chapters of the book that I'm writing one a month before it actually comes out, and then we can have conversations about it. So you'd be very welcome to come along and join me.
I am very tempted. If I were to do that, would I be able to obtain that access through your website?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a link on haloquin.net /T as in cut of TEA for the Enchanted Academy. So it's under there, and there's a little button saying Babalon Circles and Book Club. And we do a magical ritual online each month to connect with her, to experience her rather than just talk about her. And then you get the book club, so you get some of the theory and practice and things in there. And I mean, this is one of the reasons that I started writing that I put in for the contract for it, was because there's not actually a lot that's written about her that's accessible for people outside of Thelema or in a beginner's position. And there's an image of her because of the sexual liberation side of things, and the title, the Holy Harlot or Sacred Whore or whatever. There's this image of her as being someone you can only work with if you're into free love and kink and polyamory and da-di-da-di-da, and like just being a slut, basically, of whatever gender, right? So there's this image that is sometimes quite sticky for people. But I'm quite private with my, like, how I like to do my sexual life, even if I'll talk about it quite freely. I'm like, this is not for me. I'm definitely not what you would think of as dressing in like that pin-up girl aesthetic or anything like that. And I work really well with Babalon and I have a deep connection with her. And I wanted to share with people that you can engage with her without falling into the stereotype of that image, because it's not about you must sleep with lots of people and be really sexual to engage with her. It's about you must be true to your heart and your desires.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they're finding themselves more repressed than is true to them. But for other people, they're feeling pushed into being more sexual or whatever than is true for them. And Babalon's there going, no, neither one is necessary. Just be true to you. You have permission to be all of yourself in the way that is true for yourself, as a star in the company of stars, as my friend would put it.
And that's something that as a pagan teacher and a pagan minister, I encounter so often, is that people don't know who they are. And that's kind of the important bit, right? Getting to know what you believe in, the things, the truths that you hold relevant, getting to know yourself. I mean, that's very important, and not letting anybody else dictate it. That's true freedom and sovereignty.
Absolutely. And until you know, I would say until you know who you are, you can't do magic. That's not true, right? You can do magic, you can work with the gods, you can be a pagan without being sure of all the details, or even being sure of what it is that you truly want, because that's part of the process of the kind of magic that we do within a lot of pagan spaces and witchy spaces is the development, the uncovering what your work in the world is, what your love is. What is it that you love?
Right.
Well, if you don't know, that's okay. You can just be open to exploring things. And part of that openness, of course, is being allowed to ask the question of, does this feel right for me or not? And if it doesn't, then saying, okay, I looked at it, or okay, I tried it and it wasn't right for me, and I can put it down. How do you go about supporting people in that, like starting to take that step to work out who they are?
Even the most evolved person, and I don't mean that in a negative way, that there's unevolved and evolved people, but even someone who's very sure of themselves, who hasn't, through their lens of perception, projected somebody else's beliefs onto their life and their own personal gnosis, even those people need to go through a little bit of deconditioning. I did. I think everybody needs to kind of regularly check themselves. So you go through this deprogramming, this deconditioning, where you really examine your beliefs, your perspective, what you hold true, and you find out why. People will proclaim things loud. Well, this is wrong, and I don't believe in it. Okay, why? And sometimes they know, but sometimes the reason they believe something is taboo or something is wrong is because they were told that it was, and they've never explored it. They've never looked into whether or not that is something that they truly believe. And then it comes back down to that, well, you need to determine what you think is important and what your true belief is. There are so many individuals that come to my classes that have waited so long to do this. And that's a really common thing. People in their 40s, 50s, 60s, they're looking for themselves, really. That's what this process is. It's being a perpetual scholar, being a curious person, having the confidence to people ask where they should start if they're struggling. Of course, I always recommend therapy, professional help. I think everybody can benefit from that. I also really enjoy watching people become self-driven, self-propelled, because while it's important to have people that you trust as your mentors, the most important mentor you can have is yourself. So that was a really rambly way of answering that question.
I love a good ramble because you never know what's come out. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of my good friends is a hospice nurse, says that it is so true that most of the time when people have regrets, it's that they weren't brave enough to be themselves.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's so sad. That's heartbreaking, but it's also not something to be ashamed of. Everything is stacked up against you exploring who you truly are.
It's one of the reasons I speak openly about things that are a little bit taboo or that are private or that you can get judged for. So, as I say, I found the pagan path and witchcraft when I was quite young. I was like 10 or 11. And I hadn't twigged that the fact that my mom read tarot and taught us to talk to trees and things like that was anything that, yeah, right. But because of that, and because of the kind of person that I am, people call it oversharing. I talk quite openly about things that other people perhaps wouldn't. So I'll talk about some of the challenges I have with having an ADHD brain. I love my brain, but some of it is challenging. And I'll talk openly about what those challenges are and where they come from, because other people who hear it then go, oh, that's normal for some brains. I'm not a freak because I can't do this thing that everyone thinks I should be able to do. Or I'm not a freak because I do this thing that most people don't do. And it's the same with, as I mentioned, kink. And I remember talking openly about, so I like to do kinky things like rope bondage, but without sex involved. So I do that as kind of like, it's a tactile way of interacting with friends. I teach classes on how to use that to go into trance, but how to tie yourself so you're in control of it, so that you're carrying yourself into trance. And
Yeah,
then
that's really ancient, isn't it? That's an ancient practice,
yeah.
because I've read about that in I've read about that in a very, very old text. Isn't it? I mean, I don't know enough
Yeah.
about it, but it is an ancient form of trance work.
Well, if you think about, so it's quite common knowledge, right, that some initiations will involve the binding of hands
Yeah,
or some kind of restriction of movement, right? There's also examples in the various texts about sensory deprivation or restriction, like the old, I think it's Irish bards going into a cave and placing a heavy rock on their belly and lying in the darkness with that weight, that restriction. So there's in order to allow their minds to loosen, to open to inspiration. So there's all these different layers where it in different ways, in different formats. It's all there. It's true with rhythm, with all sorts of different aspects. But I talk about it openly in order to somewhat destigmatize it, not necessarily because I think everyone should be doing it, because it's not for everyone. Not everyone wants to, and that's fine. But because I know so many people who have a deep curiosity about it or a deep desire for it, and they felt like monsters because they thought they must be wrong to want to tie someone up or to think that anyone could enjoy it. And they've never done it, they've never acted on it. So they've never done anything wrong, but they had a desire to, and that desire, they felt like a monster for it. And I've had quite a few people where I've spoken openly about it, and eventually they've said to me, I really want, like, I have that desire. And I'm never going to act on it because my partner isn't interested or, I don't have anyone to do it with. But now I feel like less of a monster because normal people like you are talking about it and saying it's okay to want to do it. And I'm like, it's okay to want, the caveat is it's okay to want to do it with someone that wants to do it with you. And that's what these people want to do, right? So it's that deep desire doesn't make you a monster.
No, no, we're so quick to want to stigmatize things and label and separate and other. Thank you for being your true self to make it safer for others to be their true selves.
Thank you.
I love that. I just spoke to Mara Starling on the podcast, and she said to own your cringe. I was talking about something really funny that had happened to me, and she was also sharing something, funny that happened to her. But it's true that the more you really sink deeper into your true self, how are you going to find the people you align with if you're not being real? If you're not
Right.
actually aligned with what you truly believe in.
And you've got the option of sort of hiding all of the different parts of yourself and presenting an acceptable face that fits expectations, and you'll probably end up with a lot of people who will spend time with you because they're like, oh yeah, you're nice, but they don't know you and they're not necessarily your people. Whereas if you are if you try and be the best person that you are, and you are letting yourself be who you are and express things obviously appropriately, right? It's generally, as I found out, best not to mention that you're into bondage at work. I did it accidentally.
Whoops.
Yeah. Thankfully it was fine. But yeah, right, like appropriate spaces, have a little bit of sensibleness. Then the people who, as you say, who resonate with that will draw closer, and the people who don't resonate with that will move away, and that can feel like a rejection. But actually, it's just that they're not your people.
Yeah.
And why would you want to be around people who aren't? Like, why would you want to spend lots of time with and be like close to people who aren't your people? You can be around people who aren't on the same wavelength as you, but are nice, and that's nice. But
Yeah, why not sink truer into what you really are and who you really are? I think taking the role of the curious observer, really considering something. I mean, how can we be scholars? How can we be perpetual scholars if we're not interested in learning about new things?
And learning about them doesn't mean you're going to act on them as well, right?
Yeah, oh, right. It might not be your thing, and that's okay. I'm going through all of the books that you've written, and I really am interested in folk tales, fairies, and spirits. I think that's another Pagan Portals book.
Yeah.
That, so you talk about land spirits in that one.
Yeah. So, and again, at the beginning, I encourage everyone, it's like write in the margins. I occasionally get people come up to me at events and go, I know you say I should write in the margins this, but I can't. It's a sacrilege. And I'm like, well, that's okay. You don't have to, but make these books your own in some way,
Yeah.
right? Because then you're having a conversation with it. And I like sticky notes. I put sticky notes in things. So folk tales, fairies, and spirits is again, it's about that conversation. And I think the subtitle is something like Fairy Magic from Story to Practice. And where that grew out of was my understanding. So as a small child, I knew that there were beings that I couldn't see, but I could feel, and I could kind of almost hear. And occasionally I knew there were these beings in the kind of edges of spaces. I grew up in a large town, very urban environment. So it would be sort of hedgerow. Also corners, and your puppy dog's just poking their head up behind your ear.
Oh yeah,
That is very cute.
she's ridiculous. She's in here like having nightmares and being loud, and it's usually Sprocket Sprocket is my other dog. It's usually Sprocket that's disrupting things in general, but this is Hazel, and she's currently chasing a fly. So
Well, I was just enjoying. I was talking about beings on the edges of things, and then there was this little head on the edge.
she's snapping at the air. Yes.
So yeah, so I grew up, and I was fascinated by these beings that I could feel, and the best word that I found for them was fairies. And of course, all the images that I had were the little flower fairies in the Mary Cecile Barker's work. And I'm like, oh yeah, in the hedgerows. And they didn't look like that to me, but it was close enough that it gave me that language. And as a sidebar, like Tinkerbell, right? I adore Tinkerbell.
Oh, me too.
And people turn around and they go, fairies are not like Tinkerbell. And I'm like, have you read the original story? Have you actually looked at even the Disney portrayal of her? She is, yes, she's small and winged, right? So she's buying into that thing, but she's really sensual. She's sexy. She has strong like emotions. She's not got human ethics, but she's certainly got some kind of ethic of her own. She's magical, right? She's I don't know. She's got some of the old hallmarks.
A little vindictive too. I love her character. I agree with you there.
She tries to get Wendy killed because there's this young girl coming into her space, and she's like, "No, I don't want you here. This is my space." And so she, so there's these elements of this sort of older folkloric being like coming through even in Tinkerbell. So I'm like, stop hating on Tinkerbell, but I get what people mean. So anyway, there were these spirits, and as I got older, I went through that thing. What we were talking about few minutes ago about how you can doubt yourself. You can have beliefs, and then you can start to doubt yourself. How you can start to believe something that doesn't gel with what's true for you. And I'd go through phases of feeling like I was going to be seen as being silly for engaging with these beings and working with the fair folk alongside this deep, like, no, they're real, and I know they're real, and they walk alongside me, and I have learned so much from them, and they feel like family in one way. We live in this world with these spirits. So folktales, fairies, and spirits grew out of kind of this finally realizing that there's this edge where you can go, okay, these beings that we call fairies, there's a wide range of them. It's a big umbrella term. They are spirits. And in each landscape, you have slightly different spirits that are living in this world with us. So we've got spirits of the land that are spirits of the rock, spirits of the landscape, of the hills, of the trees. And they may or may not be included in the category of fairy, depending on who you talk to. And then you've got these other spirits that are similar to us but different in that they live close to us in this world. They share this world with us and we share this world with them. And you can find traces of them and of how to interact with them in folk tales and in the stories. And I grew up, as I said, my mum taught me to like speak to trees and treat the trees as people. And there were tarot cards in the house. She'd read tarot. She never taught me how to read tarot because I never thought to ask, which I had a laugh with her about last year. But I never asked you. She went, oh, no, by the time you were interested, I kind of assumed you knew how to do it. So I grew up feeling these spirits and these beings, and began to learn more about the tradition and the old practices and the old ways of understanding those spirits in my landscape through the folk tales and the folklore, because it wasn't passed down through my family directly. But all that information is still there. And you can find stories that tell you about how to interact with them or not interact with them if you are not a magical practitioner, right? And how to interact with them if you are a magical practitioner. And those are different. And I was like, oh, but these spirits that live in the world are neighbors in the different lands, in different countries. They have slightly different customs and slightly different culture. In Wales, it's slightly different to the culture of the fair folk in Scotland, in England, in Ireland, even just that close, right? So I wanted to write this book to help people use the stories of their landscape and to demonstrate how you explore stories and the folk tales that have these pieces of lore. How do you find the lore of the fair folk that are your neighbors in the stories that are local to you? And so it's a lot of, it's based in sort of Northern European folk tales, because those are the stories that I've got. But I use those as examples to go, okay, find the stories that are local to you that talk about your spirits in your landscape. And this is how you can go about looking for those keys of how to open a relationship with them respectfully, and then learn from them how better to build on that relationship and maintain it.
That's lovely. That is the key, right? Respect. I grew up in the mountains, and there are some very old, disconnected from anything that we would perceive to be human entities or spirits. And I think that really, though, if you approach it from a curious observer, respectful standpoint, you're fine. There's a lot of fear mongering, isn't there, with the fairies, the she, call them the spirits, the land spirits. And I've been seeing so much of that lately, people warning about doing certain things with them. Maybe there's something I'm not aware of, but I've never encountered anything truly terrifying. I mean, there were some things that I was like, oof, all right, I will definitely be moving on. But as long as you're respectful, and that's just my own personal belief. Do you believe that as well?
Yeah, to a point. So I often describe interacting with the spirit world, as particularly fairies and the fair folk. Atilwith Teg is one of the Welsh names for them, the fair family. As if you go into the forest, or if you go swimming in the ocean, right, you're going to encounter a lot of different beings. And as you get into the ocean, you're going into this space, you're in a slightly different space to what is natural for you or what is normal for you. We're better at walking on land, right? If we dive into the water, we've got to hold our breath. So we're slightly out of our element, but not entirely. And there are going to be in there fish and little creatures that immediately swim away because they're like, nope, we don't want to know. There are going to be others that are curious and that want to come and check us out. There are some that if they see us, they're hungry, they might take a bite. And there are others that will come and help us if we're stuck. And if you take the example of like dolphins, some dolphins will come and play and be helpful as long as they're not in the middle of eating. If they're hunting fish and they're in the middle of eating and you interrupt them, they get quite upset. But other dolphins are just plain dicks. like the individuals, right?
It's true. I've read stories about that. Yes.
Yeah. And so I use that as an illustration. It's like the fair folk, the spirits in the spirit world, they are as varied as the creatures in the wild, in the sea. They are as varied as human beings. Some of us want to be helpful for each other. Some of us want to chat. Some days we do, some days we don't. Some people don't want to know. Some people don't want to know you specifically, right? But they're happy with other people. And so that's one big part of it. So approaching with respect is key, but also it's that listening. And again, this comes back to the knowing yourself. One of the ways in which you can work on knowing yourself is that I teach about is about embodiment, gently bringing ourselves back to our body slowly, not forcing things, because a lot of us are disconnected for very valid reasons, right? So we've got to do that gently, sometimes with professional support. And slowly learning what a yes, this is a good thing for me feels like, and no, this isn't the right thing for me feels like. So that when we approach one of the spirits with respect, part of that is that we're listening and we know what it feels like when they go, I'm not interested today, or I'm not interested in you, or I am interested in you because you look like dinner. And when you've got a spirit that you approach with respect, listening, going, hi, and they go, oh, yeah, actually, I really like working with humans and you look like my kind of person. So you get to know that sense. And the third aspect of this, because it's always three things, because
it
is that, again, some people have a resonance with these spirits. Some people are well suited to spirit work, and some people aren't. And they just want to get on with their everyday lives. And the fair folk are powerful, and the spirits of the land are powerful because they are so close to our world. So they have quite a lot of influence. They have quite a lot of power in the manifest world that we live in with them. So we know that they're powerful. And if we just want to get on with our day, if we're just an everyday human, like most humans in most stories and most cultures, then we just want to get on with it.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to navigate the nuances of communicating with spirits and taking into account their likes and dislikes while we're wandering through their forest. So we just want something that says, hi, sorry, I'm not don't mean to trespass. A little charm that's like a protective charm, a warding charm or whatever, or a little prayer or whatever it is, that's just like, I know you're not my people and I'm not your people and I'm just moving through your space, or this is my space and, I'm sure you'll do well elsewhere. So for most people in the world, that close relationship with these beings isn't appropriate.
Yes. I think that's a very fair distinction, and perhaps really also what I believe and poorly explained, because I think that honoring boundaries and recognizing when really you really should be moving along. Like this is a lovely place to stop, but this isn't the place for you to stop. Even when I'm out wildcrafting, or I will get the urge sometimes to not take a certain item. I say okay, and I move on. Do you do exploring with friends or people that you work with, that you're close with?
I do. So I end up doing quite a lot of wandering on my own. Again, and I think part of that is because it's easier to focus on listening and paying attention and being aware when you're not tempted to chat with other people. But I have got a small group of friends. We're not quite a coven because it's not that tradition, but like we work together, magical working folk, and I've got there's a few of us that we will sometimes go and visit sacred sites, and we'll be chat, and then we'll take a bit of time to just be in our own space and be with the space. And we might do a little bit of ritual. We might pull some runes or cards or something while we're there to like listen. But it's about that sort of being present in the space and then coming back together and sharing our experiences, sharing what's inspired us. And that can be a really, really lovely way of doing it. But we don't get to do it nearly as often as I'd like to.
I think that that's a really special thing. I don't take just anybody to the woods.
Yeah.
You said that you pull runes. What kind of runes do you enjoy? What do you use?
So I actually started out the first set I had was an Elder Fuvak,
Of
very
course.
sad,
Yeah.
right? But the first set I encountered, my dad had a copy of Ralph Bloom's The Little Plastic Tiles of the Elder Fuvak with the blank rune.
Yeah.
Um,
The weird. Yeah.
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 So those were the first ones I encountered. But the first set I had, my best friend growing up made me a set, and she varnished it so thickly that they felt like plastic. But they were these beautiful Elder Fuvak runes, and I still have the bag. Um, Although I actually gave the runes themselves to another friend, so they've sort of passed on. And then when I went to university, I made a set of Anglo-Saxon Futhorc runes, and I really like that they've got some extra ones in there, like the grave rune and the altar rune and the world serpent, because that just it brings in that space of those older, in the Greek, you'd call them Titans. In the Norse, of course, it's the Jotuns. And it brings in those older primal forces, which I resonate quite strongly with, being someone who's always been pixie led. So yeah, I really like that. And then about 10 years ago, I made another set from a tree that I was working with of the Elder Fuvak. Yeah, Elder Fuvak again. So the one that most people know with the 24 runes,
Sure.
just so that I could, work with those.
The Elder Futhark runes are something I draw a rune every morning, but the runes are special.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I love that they are like in themselves spirits. So each rune is itself a spirit and a being. And so you can work with them as divination symbols that kind of tell you a story. And you can work with them as charms. And you can work with them as spirits. And I just really enjoy the relationship aspect of it.
Oh, me too. I actually developed a relationship with each one. So on your website, I saw the Enchanted Academy. Is that something that you're still doing?
Yeah, yeah. So that's the umbrella, and I chose the name because I could abbreviate it to tea, as in a cup of tea, because tea's magic, and
Oh, yeah.
for it, I had to.
Yeah. What's your favorite tea?
My favorite. All right, please excuse me. It's chai tea. So
Tea tea.
spiced black tea.
Spice
Um,
black tea.
yeah, and I quite like black tea with rose in as well. And then there's a pucker tea that is three cinnamons. And like, as you can tell, I like the spicy.
I do too. Sorry. Sidebar.
It's kind of the school of, basically it's where I've put all my courses. There's a membership program, so you can sign up just for the self-study library, and that I add things to it as we go. So there's several courses on there, like foundations of witchcraft and elemental magic, so that you can like learn and then deepen some of the basic tools. And then there's various master classes, including shape-shifting for witches and intuitive tarot reading, so that you can pick up a deck and start reading with no previous experience, working with the fair folk. And I've got an associated community with it as well. So I was, for the last 2 years, I think I was doing almost weekly live circles, all of which were recorded and all of which are going to end up in the library eventually. So that includes ones, Crimson Circles on embodied magic, sacred sensuality, Babalon, and related topics, fairy circles, so working with fairy magic, and general other topics. And then I've got the main membership, which is the Enchanted Circle, and that includes a live course ongoing, as well as access to the library and all the previous courses. So you can sign up on a monthly basis, or if you sign up to my course that's just starting this month, which is 13 Moons of Witchcraft, you can buy the course as a one block payment, and you'll get a year's membership to the Enchanted Academy for all the access to all the other things as well. So I always put, wherever I can, sliding scales and options for scholarships. So when people are hard up, because I've always been someone who lives on very little. I was a student for a long time. It took me 12 years to do my PhD, disabled, like various different things. So I just sort of cut down all my expenses. So I know what it's like to have a tight budget. So I'm always open for people who want to come and get involved to reach out to me and say, look, I'd love to get involved. I can't afford that price tag for whatever reason. It doesn't matter why. How can I come and play? And if you're going to come and be engaged, people are more than welcome, and we can work out what's a fair price and a fair amount that allows me to still keep running it, because everything costs money and of course it takes time. So anyway, that's
Yes.
my sidebar, because obviously money's always a funny topic. But yeah, so I'm running that, and that's got so many things in it now. There's including a storytelling for Magic course called the Cauldron of Arwen, which was an intensive working with Katelyn and Halo. So the classes, we did them live, and the recordings and all the workbooks, they're up there. Working with the deities of love, so that's a course that's up there. So yeah, if you're interested in diving in deeply to embodied witchcraft and spirit, working with spirits in that modern pagan space, and developing your own practice with someone who has been doing it for 30 years almost, and who is neurodivergent and openly weird, you'd be very, very welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, and the community is free as well, so you can always just come and dip in and see, like, oh, what are the people like here? What's this Halo person like to cross paths with?
I was also enamored with your Goblin Circus, mini goblin storytelling show. Delightful.
That started as a storytelling show, and the goblins are invisible, and Geraldine drank all of the fairy ointment. So unfortunately I can't give my audience the ointment so that they can see them. So, but the goblins are quite happy for me to like tell you their stories and tell you how they got to be there, and it grew over. It's been going for like 10 years or so, how long it's been, and it grew into this thing where about 4 years ago, somehow I ended up hosting a goblin masquerade. So we had a full day in a big community. It's a big community hall. So it was a goblin market, and we've done this each year, a goblin market with entertainment all day. So like various performers come and perform. We had a goblin bard, and we had someone talking on the the Cottingsley fairies, and musicians and harpists and all sorts of things. So all throughout the market, with a little cafe. And then in the evening we have a fairy tale ball, and people dress up in their glad rags and wings. And yeah, so that's that, in this tiny little village on the west coast of Wales, on the edge of Cantragwaelod, which is the lost lands. It's considered to be the Atlantis of Wales. This tiny little village. Every spring, just before the tourists start coming in for tourist season, there's Goblin Day, and there's a Goblin Masquerade. And the reason, obviously it was the Goblin Masquerade because it grew out of the Goblin Circus. But the reason people love it is because when you say to people, oh, it's a fairy themed event, everyone feels like they have to like get dressed up in a certain way or be very prissy, or, lots of glitter and things. And lots of people like that. But if you say it's goblins, some people will come and they'll put on all the glitter and sparkles because they love it, and other people will come in sort of tattered robes and welly boots, and other people will turn up covered in bones because they've gone the bone shaman route. And we had one little person turn up as a goblin warrior, as a hunter of goblins, and a family of toadstools one year. It lets people be who they are, how they want to be, lets them play without any pressure.
That's amazing. Now I'm going to have to travel and attend the next one. I think we need to do more of that. So I cannot believe that exists. That's amazing.
Well, it's one of those challenges. The reason there's a market is because I needed to pay for the hall and for a security guard to have,
of course.
Right. And what I do at the end of the event is that once everything's paid for, I look at what's left in the pot and divide it equally between each of the acts. And like I have myself on that list, so I get the same as anyone that stepped up on stage, like each act, myself and our lovely volunteer. There's a couple of volunteers that do the doors that I couldn't do it without. What it means is that at the end of the day, everyone gets about 20 quid, which is not remotely anything sustainable for if you're doing it as a full-time thing.
Yeah.
But we all come together, do it for the community.
It's a performance, right? I mean, I'm looking and
Yeah.
I found like an old resource for it, and it looks like people sign up for performance slots, right? So it's
Yeah.
actually that sort of thing is missing around me, and I think that that's delightful.
And then we're actually taking a break next year because it's a lot of work. And so this is one of the reasons that these things sort of fold, or close down or shift and become a bit more commercial or whatever, is because actually it's a lot of work to do, alongside trying to live. It is very true that if you hold the space, the community come and they build it together. And that's what makes it such a wonderful thing. So I'm like, me and my partner does all the sound for it and a lot of the tech stuff. So we'll take a break next year and we're actually going to do a few little events. So we did a pop-up busking thing already this summer and had the circus on the beach, basically, for an hour as part of a storytelling festival. And it was just like pop up, pop down. So we'll do sort of little things like that to kind of connect with people and to keep the spirit alive. Then come back together for a bigger thing the year after next. But I've heard people sort of going, oh, it's really disrespectful to like dress up as fairies or to like dress up as goblins or what have you. If you're a magical practitioner, you should be respecting them, not dressing up as them. They're not going to like that. And it always makes me laugh because it's the fair folk that asked me to do it that led me down this path. Because what it does is it makes space for people to play and relax. And it also keeps their stories alive. It keeps the bardic spirit alive. It builds that community. And a lot of the people that turn up have a connection to these things. And so when they connect in this space, which isn't overtly magical, it's a space that's held that people can come in and just sort of relax and chill out and play. And it's supported by the general community and everyone gets a lot out of it. But the magical folk within there find each other. And so the spirits that I work with anyway really like that. And I'm like, yes, tell our stories like the story, like Tinkerbell.
I mean, I can't trust anybody that's not at least a little bit whimsical. Like, where is your whimsy? That's disconcerting to me.
Yeah.
Moving on.
And it's that thing, right? Again, like the things we were talking about earlier, dressing up and telling stories and making music and playing is a really ancient magical technique and a deep healing human thing.
And that's really what weaving the magic into these stories does. I mean, if you're not embracing childlike wonder and really tuning in to that magic, how are you going to manifest it? How are you going to bring it into this space?
Yeah.
Thank you for today, Halo. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.